because this was a massive scam perpetrated on the U.S. public with massive consequences that we're still experiencing today.
So recently, Aaron Maté was on Judge Napolitano's podcast calling Russiagate a massive scam. So in this video, he gets into the truth regarding Russiagate and whether there's anything new in the recent document released by the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. So let's get his take on this, because there's been very few people that have investigated Russiagate from the start more than Aaron Maté. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Did Tulsi Gabbard reveal anything about Russiagate that we didn't already know? Or did she reinforce what people like you and I have said for years, that the government was spying directly or indirectly via GCHQ on Trump going back to 2015?
The GCHQ component, I don't think is revealed in this latest batch of releases. And I know your guest, Larry Johnson, has done a lot of work on this and talked about it. And I'll be curious to find out more. But what I think is most significant about Tulsi Gabbard's disclosures is the core allegation at the heart of Russiagate, which is that Russia, as part of an effort to help Trump, stole Democratic Party emails and gave them to WikiLeaks. This was the core allegation that everybody was obsessed with for years and years during Trump's first term. And if you question that allegation, you were a Russian asset. You were, how dare you question the consensus of the intelligence community? That was the dominant mindset back then. Well, now we know, because Tulsi Gabbard has released it, that right before the election, 2016, there was an intelligence community assessment that we only got now, nearly 9 years later. And what did it say? The FBI and the NSA had low confidence that Russia was behind the hacking and leaking of Democratic Party emails. And rather than tell the public that, we were told the opposite, that the intelligence community had high confidence that Russia was behind the hack and leak. And that was the basis for its sprawling interference campaign to install Trump. So serious countervailing evidence was concealed from the public. And that to me is the biggest scandal here. And it reinforces what I've been saying all along, which is that, yes, some U.S. intelligence officials like James Clapper, John Brennan, Robert Mueller, they told us that Russia hacked and leaked these emails, but there was never any evidence for it. And in fact, all the available evidence undermined that Russia hacking and leaking allegation, including the fact that CrowdStrike, which was the Clinton campaign contractor that first accused Russia of hacking the DNC, they admitted under oath to Congress that actually, yeah, we have no concrete evidence of Russian hacking.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea that Podesta's emails were hacked by the Russians was just thrown out there as if it was fact, even though there's no substantiation of that. They ran with this as if this was the biggest story since Watergate, if not a bigger story than Watergate, with Elizabeth Warren out there saying, hey, if Trump wasn't president, he'd be in handcuffs right now, and various intelligence employees and high-ranking officials like James Comey, saying Trump can't be trusted. He's essentially working on behalf of the Russians. This whole thing was garbage, and we know now that documents prove that they were made privy to that fact. Clapper and Brennan and Obama and Comey were all made privy to the fact that they didn't have solid intelligence that was the case. And some of them even went beyond that and said, Trump is colluding with Russia. Not just that Russia had hacked the election somehow or hacked these emails, but that Trump was colluding with Russia. This was all nonsense, and I'm so glad that there are people reporting this, even though the mainstream media is trying to cover it up. They're trying to talk about other things, and, the Trump administration isn't doing themselves a favor by not indicting any of these die-hard criminals, by the way.
And that all by the intelligence community for very many years. And now we're only getting new details about the fraud that was perpetrated on the public.
You'll enjoy this. It's from 2016. You know why I'm laughing in a second. And 2017. Chris, cut number 2.
The Russians did it. It was the Russians who tried to interfere in our election. Every member of the committee agrees it was the Russians. They didn't change the outcome, but they did release information embarrassing to the Democratic Party. It did affect Hillary Clinton. There's only one person in Washington that I know of that has any doubt about what Russia did in our election, and it's President Trump.
Just get a load of that. Lindsey Graham says those things, completely parroting the Russiagate narrative that the mainstream media led with, and egg has been blown right back into their face over this, and Trump is still out there endorsing Lindsey Graham. and actually denouncing people like Thomas Massie that actually want him to be held to his campaign pledges of ending the war in Ukraine and releasing the Epstein files. And oh yeah, Doge cuts, which are laughable because the $2 trillion in projections that Doge made didn't exactly come to fruition. And who wants to hold Trump to account when it comes to debt spending? It's Massey. But hey, no, we're going to not only endorse Lindsey Graham, talk about it on Truth Social, but actually include him in diplomatic parties that talk to the Ukrainians. This is absurd. Trump rewards loyalty with utter disdain when it comes to principles, and total just absurd CNN speak when it comes to Graham with success and rewards.
Oh, how the times change.
They do. As it turns out, it wasn't just Trump. It was also the FBI and the NSA, and that was kept from the public until now, which is a massive scandal. And the reason why the FBI and the NSA doubted this Russian hacking leaking allegation is they say in this suppressed intelligence assessment that they don't have the technical evidence for it, which is exactly what I've been saying for 8 years. And this is why I never went along with Russiagate, or one of the reasons, along with the conspiracy theory that Trump was a Russian asset, which I just thought was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. We were told that Russia hacked and leaked these emails, but we never got any evidence. And the job of a journalist is to go with what the facts are. And instead, our media acted as stenographers for people like John Brennan and Lindsey Graham. And by the way, why did Lindsey Graham go with all this? Because he's a Trump ally after all. Well, Lindsey Graham immediately used the Russian hacking allegations to push the proxy war in Ukraine. John McCain and Lindsey Graham went to Ukraine in late 2016, early 2017, and they said on the way back, Russia has attacked our democracy, and this is why we have to push back against them, including in Ukraine. So, and one of the reasons why I felt compelled to take a strong stance on this, because I always felt Russiagate was fueling geopolitical tensions. It was fueling animus toward Russia.
That's exactly right, and I'm so glad he's touching on this part of the story, because typically when you hear about Russiagate, even on dissident media and independent media to some extent, it's always focused on the deep state's quest to undermine Trump, which was part of it. But there was another end of Russiagate, and that was to inflame tensions with Russia. He's exactly right about the film that you can see, videos of both Graham and McCain actually in Ukraine at the time. I think it was 2014, and they're stoking the flames, saying, hey, this is going to be the year of aggression toward Russia. They're literally on camera saying that. You can still find those videos today. I think the judge has played them. So this was designed to keep the flames of the proxy war with Russia going, which had already started in 2014. That is when the small-scale civil war broke out between the Donbass region and Ukraine proper over what the status of Donbass would be. And ultimately, the Minsk Accords were not adhered to by Ukraine, where they were supposed to provide political autonomy to the Donbass, not unlike that what you would have found in Hong Kong for some time, or Macau. But that's not what happened, and that's a big reason for this war. So he's totally right. When they were saying that Trump is a Russian asset, guess what Trump was doing? He was arming Ukraine. He was giving them $400 million worth of weapons, including the Javelins and Aegis missile systems. The Javelins he still boasted about as of a few months ago or a few weeks ago. He was denouncing them for giving Snowden asylum. He was slapping on sanctions because of their acquisition of Crimea, which Crimeans wanted by a large margin to be part of Russia, by the way, anyways. And you just hear that he was still working on behalf of Russia. No, Trump's posture toward Russia was actually much more adversarial than you'll ever hear, especially from the mainstream media. So again, I'm very glad that he's covering this part of it, because it gave us two of the worst psychological operations in modern history. One where they tried to frame the president of treason when he was acting actually antagonistic toward Russia, and fanning this flames of this proxy war that eventually materialized into what we see it today, which is a pit that's taken $200 billion worth of the U.S. Taxpayer money for fruitless gains, for no gains, and Russia still controls the Donbass.
The point that, my late mentor, Stephen F. Cohen, a professor at Princeton and NYU, esteemed Russia scholar, he would constantly make. And we've seen the result. I mean, I don't think we would have had, I shouldn't say we wouldn't have had, but certainly Russiagate played a major role in fueling the escalation of the Ukraine war, and we're still paying the price.
Wow. Aaron, a pleasure. Well, actually, before we sign off, is there another tranche that's about to, documents that Gabbard's about to release? And if so, do we know what it covers?
This speaks to another critical piece of information that was kept from the public until years later. In 2020, John Ratcliffe, now the director of the CIA, he revealed that in July 2016, right before the FBI kicked off the Trump-Russia probe, that John Brennan briefed Obama on intelligence that he had picked up that Russia was aware of a plot to frame Trump as a Russian asset and to tie him to Russian interference in the election. So we only learned about this 4 years later, that Obama and Brennan were aware of a Hillary Clinton campaign plot to frame Trump as a Russian asset. And rather than put a stop to it or tell the public about it, they helped Hillary Clinton do it by, the Trump-Russia investigation and the intelligence community assessment that Brennan oversaw. So they were in on this. And so what John Durham did in his report is produce an annex detailing what he calls the Clinton plan intelligence. And when John Durham's report was released, this was 2 years ago now, 2023, that annex was kept from the public. Now the Trump administration is going to declassify Durham's annex all about the Clinton plot, which I can't wait to read.
Yeah, and I think that's actually come out since, that it even sheds more light on the fact that they were made privy to the fact that this was all a farce. This was all a fraud. This was all a Clinton campaign attempt to undermine Trump. It was an adversarial campaign that started with the Steele dossier that they just carried into fruition from the government. This was duplicitous in so many ways, and you guys know I'm not a big Trump fan, but this is just, beyond the scope of imagination, and then we're just supposed to assume that no one pays any price for this. The only one that's ever paid a price is the low-level FBI official, or the official that submitted the FISA warrant request. I think he was in the FBI, saying that Carter Page, a low-level administrator in the Trump administration, was guilty of being a Russian asset and a Russian spy, even though that guy knew that Carter Page was working with the CIA, and when prompted, the CIA said, yeah, he's working with us, he's not a Russian asset. They still went forward requesting this FISA warrant, and it's just absurd. No other heads have rolled since then.
Right. And John Durham, as I recall, indicted one person, some young assistant lawyer in the FBI, and who got a slap on the wrist for falsifying documents submitted to FISA to get a search warrant to listen to George Papadopoulos. This stuff, this like Groundhog Day, we've heard this over and over again.
We're in a 2016 loop constantly. But this is what happens when you frame a campaign as Russian assets and use the U.S. intelligence community to launch that scam, to advance that scam. There's going to be accountability, even if it takes a while. And for a long time, in Trump's first term, people like Kash Patel were trying to get these same documents declassified. But people like Gina Haspel and Mark Esper and William Barr were pushing back because they didn't want to embarrass the national security state, because this is embarrassing for them. But now it's a different ballgame, and we're getting, thankfully, some new information. And even if Trump is 100% motivated here by trying to distract from Epstein or whatever else, I mean, that might be true, but I don't really care. The question is this material factual, and is this important? And the answer is yes to both those questions, because this was a massive scam perpetrated on the U.S. public with massive consequences that we're still experiencing today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with Aaron on that. Totally. I want to hear the truth in both cases, the Epstein release and the Russiagate release, and I do think there is a lot of meritorious things in these recent documents, and not only Aaron has talked about that, but also people that were really close to studying that topic back at the time, like Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, have said the same things, that these do reveal new revelations that just show the layers of madness and duplicity that was involved in this whole scam. And that's exactly what it was. The only thing that I'll dispute when it comes to what Aaron said there a little bit is that at some point repercussions have to happen or punishments have to occur, something like that. I don't think that's the case. I hate to say. I mean, if there were actually punishments and indictments and charges, you would have already seen them already. Instead, Trump's on Truth Social memeing about this, making a photo of like the O.J. Simpson Bronco chase, but instead of, Al Cowlings, it's the face of Barack Obama, and it's Trump and the police cars following him. It's so absurd. They know they're not going to charge these people, so they meme about it and hope that that's enough red meat to give the conservative America First crowd, something to talk about without actually handing down punishments, which would come in the form of indictments and charges, because it's just beyond dispute right now that at least Comey, Brennan, and Clapper are guilty of perjury, if nothing else, if not greater charges. This was a serious conspiracy within the federal government to undermine Trump, while they were calling us conspiracy theorists for saying this was nonsense back then, which many of us did. Aaron certainly did that. Aaron's not a big Trump fan. He's certainly not MAGA Inc. whatsoever, but he saw through this madness because it was designed to do that and inflame tensions with Russia. I hate to say it worked, and I hate to say I don't think anyone's going down for this. These people were criminals. This wasn't a hoax, or this was a total hoax, and for this to be front and center now is good, but it's not going to satisfy Trump's base when it comes to his cover-up of the Epstein story. And if he doesn't charge anyone with this, or anyone high-ranking with this, it's just setting up yet another disappointment of the Trump administration and the Trump program, which has dissatisfied a lot of people. He's armed Ukraine. He's started a new war with Iran. He's doubled down on starting a war, or exacerbating the war in Yemen, which he did in his first term too. He used one of his only vetoes to keep that war going. Then he bombed them for about a month back in March. You had the Signalgate controversy or whatever, but he's bankrolling a genocide in Gaza, and he's refusing to cut spending. Instead of cutting spending, he's railing against everyone that dares to ridicule him for not cutting spending, like the people that actually want him to adhere to what he says, like Massey. And by the way, this shows the difference in treatment between Massey and Lindsey Graham is not about loyalty, because Thomas Massey stuck by him during all this Russiagate madness, as Lindsey Graham just joined the liberal establishment trying to take down Trump over Russiagate. Well, what does Massey get for that now? He gets primary challenges. He gets Trump talking about him all the time, and he's raising money off that, but he is persona non grata to Trump. Why? Because he wants to have Trump be held to his word and his best campaign pledges. And Lindsey Graham, he just wants more war in Ukraine, and he wants to be part of the regime and neocon establishment. And hey, Trump's choosing Lindsey Graham's side. I hate to say, that's the truth. But I do want to hear from you down below. Do you think the recent Russiagate release did have a lot of information that we didn't have before? Do you agree with Aaron on that? Where do you see this going from here? Let me know in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Judge Napolitano. He does an awesome show. Glad to see Aaron there every time he's on there. And please consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you can support the channel, and I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.